How do F1 drivers stay cool in the heat? With Formula 1 heading all around the world, the drivers will experience all kinds of conditions. From the incredibly cold weather we saw in the Nürburgring last year, due to it being held in October in Germany, to the searingly hot temperatures we saw at the most recent Grand Prix this year in Hungary. When we see such high temperatures in the 30+ degree range, as well as track temperatures soaring past 60 degrees, how do F1 drivers manage to not only survive this heat, but also perform on the limit lap after lap? For us mere mortals, if we get too hot in our cars, we can take off layers and switch on the air conditioning to blast ice-cool air right into our faces. Me, probably more than most, as I start to internally combust at the slightest hint of 30-degree temperatures. However, for F1 drivers, they have no such luxury. They are wrapped up in heaps of protective gear and have only their V6 hybrid engine for company. There are things the drivers can do both in and out of the car to make sure they can perform in the heat, some of which needs to be planned and prepped for months in advance. Let's start with the prep work. For some drivers, acclimatizing and adjusting themselves to the temperatures is the first step. Of course, if you're someone like Daniel Ricciardo who grew up in Australia and is used to intense heat, you might be able to adjust to the temperatures easier. That doesn't stop him working in the sun outdoors when he gets the chance though, or trying to create the heat indoors when preparing for certain races. Drivers might also exercise with their race suits on to try and replicate the conditions they'll be in come the race weekend. Basically, the more you can train your body to prepare for the heat and humidity, the better. The idea is that the heat becomes second nature to a driver, so all their focus can be on the challenge of racing and not having to think about the weather every few seconds, which is definitely what I would do. I reckon I'd manage to sweat into my eyeballs and I'd have to retire the car. Anyway, moving on. In an attempt to reduce their body temperature, drivers may treat themselves to a cheeky ice bath if they fancy it, whether that's submerging yourself in a paddling pool, an actual bathtub, or even a wheelie bin like Pierre Gasly did a few years back. It's also understood that ice baths have other benefits like speeding up recovery time and reducing inflammation of muscle tissue. Now onto the clothing. It's known that in F1, all the clothing that the drivers wear has to run to very strict safety standards. It's for these reasons that Romain Grosjean was able to walk away from his crash at the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix with very few burns, as the clothing is tested to the highest level. The race suit consists of 3 layers, and with drivers having to wear additional underwear and balaclavas, as well as gloves and boots, it can get pretty hot work driving an F1 car at the absolute limit for almost 2 hours with that many layers. With modern technology, all the above can be made from lightweight and breathable materials, which not only make it more comfortable for the driver, but helps combat heat stress. For underwear, there are also fabrics that can help move a driver's sweat to the top layer of the material and are also quick drying, so they're not sat in a pool of their own sweat for hours. Yummy. Before the start of a race, you might also see certain drivers opting for a snazzy cooling vest or a good old wet towel around the neck. Both of these things are in place to try and bring down the driver's body temperature before a race. The cooling vests come with pouches filled with ice packs and have been sported by people like George Russell as recently as the British Grand Prix this year. If a driver gets too hot, they can also crack open their helmet's visor a tad to let some breeze in, but that too might just be hot air in humid temperatures. Of course, before a race, there are also fans that can help keep a driver cool in the garage, but you can't have a fan sitting in your lap whilst you're racing around. Drinking is also vital in these temperatures. Although you could have a drink that was ice cold at the start of the race, with these heats it would quickly warm up with the track temperatures and those inside the car. Regardless of how warm your drink becomes, it's essential to hydrate during a race. In some locations like Singapore, it's estimated that a driver can lose around 3 kilograms of their weight just from sweating alone during a race. There you have it, methods that F1 drivers use to prepare for hot races both before and during the weekend. Do you think you'd be able to withstand the temperatures the drivers face? Let us know in the comment section below. Before you go, how do you fancy playing a racing game and earning an in-game currency that can be converted into real-life cash? Oh, you do? That's no surprise. Let me introduce you to Rev Racing, the first of its kind blockchain racing game. Rev Racing is the newest title in the Rev Motorsport ecosystem by Animoca Brands. It's a blockchain game powered by NFTs, non-fungible tokens, but it looks and plays like a traditional car racing game. To celebrate the alpha launch of Rev Racing, they're hosting a tournament with a prize pool of $150,000 in Rev tokens to the top 1,000 racers. In Rev Racing, you have complete control of your car and will need to accelerate, brake, and steer. The game can be played with a keyboard or a controller, it's up to you. Driving wheel support is also coming soon. Each session consists of a 3-lap run where your total time is taken, not just your fastest lap, so it pays to not only be fast, but also consistent. Your overall time then gets put up on the leaderboard. You of course now want to find out how to get involved with all of this and get set up, don't ya? Well, head on over to the link in the description to find out all you need to know to get started.